All right, good morning. It's Tuesday, week 5, and I'm excited to get things going here. So listen up. So we have our lab that we are jumping off with tomorrow. We'll begin with reviewing the recipe. I'm going to do a brief lecture here on measuring. Okay, so I'm going to talk about that here momentarily, and I'll bring out some measuring apparatus so you can see how that works. Okay, I'll do that at the end of lecture, sort of walk you through an in-person demo. I'm going to talk to you for about 10 minutes maximum. Okay, the other thing that we're going to do is we got our learning objectives here. Our learning target for the next few days here this week is we will learn and apply basic principles of measuring and lab overview. All right, so measuring and lab overview is what will be on your whiteboards. That's what we're focused on. So again, an accuracy of measuring and then an overview of the space, because we start physically doing our first lab tomorrow. Okay, I know we're all excited about that. Chef of the week, right? You've created your schedule. You know who's the chef of the week for this week. Raise your hands.
This guy.
All right, so you should know who you are. You're going to come in, put your chef coat on, and you're going to jump right to it and make sure you're opening up the Slack for chef of the week, completing that assignment, and taking those pictures with your Chromebook, evidencing that you've completed those requirements for chef of the week. So jumping in, the one thing that I wanted to draw your attention to is this is grades. We were crushing it on A's, and now we're crushing it on F's. Okay, so you can see here. Obviously, I never like taking time off. Okay, and I always prefer to be here. And I know when I have a sub, there's varying levels of engagement, and so I would just ask that you contemplate your grade today as you open your Chromebooks, which isn't yet. When I'm done lecturing, I'm going to cruise through the material, and then I want you to first things first, go into Google Classroom, go to view your work, and check your grade. I updated grades in Skyward yesterday afternoon after school, and I'll be updating Google Classroom for the remainder of the week. I won't update Skyward till next Monday. So the one thing is, if you don't get it done by Monday, it doesn't make it into Skyward, okay, until the following Monday. All right, so you can see here the number of Fs. We've got 13 in period 1, 19 in period 2, 9 in period 3, 11 and 11 in period 4 and 5. Okay, so it's an imperative that you check your grade today and you figure out what's missing. You're going to have time tomorrow after the lab to do a little bit on your Chromebooks. You're going to have time on Thursday after the lab to do a little bit on your Chromebooks. And then Friday, we do our first full Slack. So you're going to need to dedicate time to that. So if you're missing assignments, you missed completing them last week, you're going to need to use your own time now. So you've created yourself, if you're failing, you've created some homework for yourself because you didn't use the time with the sub on Thursday and Friday. All right. I again apologize for being out, but it is what it is. So I'm going to play the measuring video later on. You completed the Chef of the Week leadership schedule yesterday. You should have hit submit on that. I graded that as part of your current grade. Okay, so make sure you get that submitted today. If you were absent yesterday, get with your team and get that assignment submitted. Okay. Discuss lab replacement assignments in case of an absence. I want to talk to you about this really briefly. We have an alternative written assignment. This is not a requirement. If you miss a lab, you can always do the lab at home. Okay. So, but if you miss the lab, you'll see right here. Okay. For example, with the hand washing assignment, there's an alternative lab essay. Every assignment has one of those. Every lab has one of those. So if you miss the lab day, okay, which is typically a Thursday, if you miss that, you've missed the crux of what we're doing for that lab. You need to make it up in some alternative fashion. Okay. You can't take the learning of the rest of your group when you weren't here and apply it to your SLAT. You need to do the alternative written assignment or complete the lab and support it with a SLAT done independent of your team. Okay, those are your two options. But this is a written essay and it's a subject related to what it is we're doing for that particular week. Okay, if you go to Google Classroom, you're going to see down below, you're going to see right here, I'm going to put it up on the screen. You're going to scroll down here and you're going to see an overview, okay, right here. All right, video tutorials. You're going to see lab alternative essay overview. And there's a video that walks you through exactly what you need to complete for the alternative essay. Okay. All right. Walks you through.
Hello, Battleground Culinary Arts students. This is Chef.
I'm not going to show that to you right now, but if you need to do an alternative essay, that's where it's located. Those are the directions. I'll send you there. Okay, I've said this before, but I'll say it again. If you open up your lab and you're missing this template, okay, you might need to hit right here. It says make a copy. Okay, so if you're missing the template for your lab or any assignments, hit the make a copy button and the template will show up. Okay. We already went over the learning target. We see what's going on in Google Classroom. Okay, we've got our lab measuring and lab overview this week. And then for baking and pastry course, you have baking and pastry unit 1 and 2 that we're beginning. Okay, the culinary students do not have a Ruby assignment this week. Okay, and so baking and pastry 1 and 2 for the students in the baking and pastry curriculum. All right, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the space. All right, and then I'm going to wrap up and give you time to work independently. Here we go.
Good morning, culinary arts students. Let me give you a quick tour of your workstations. This is station number 5, and I'm gonna walk you through the equipment on the stations and how everything is laid out, so you have a good, clean overview of how things are set up for you to be successful in the kitchen. Starting off, we've got cookware on this top shelf, blender. All the parts of the blender are located on the shelf, food processor and mixer, with parts already in the bowl. You'll see the mixing attachments are located in the bowl. Some general cookware here, and then the rest of your cookware is stored on the bottom shelf in this primary cabinet. You've got a large stock pot, cast iron cook pan, some non-stick cookware, and regular saute pans. And then as well, you've got forks, knives, spoons, glassware, plates for presentation when we use those, and then some baking pans. Switching over here to the side cabinet, you got some plug and play items, an immersion circulator, hand mixer, hand blender, pasta machine in the back, and measuring containers. And then you've got mixing bowls and a grater. In the top drawer, you'll find cutlery, knives. That's where they're stored individually, so they're not stacked up and hard to get access to. We want that to be a safe situation. General utensils, hand tools, and measuring utensils in the second drawer. Third drawer, we've got typically items that are primarily for the baking and pastry course. And then some general tools. We've got a tortilla press, sushi roll, pasta hanger, squirt bottle, crepe pan, number of miscellaneous items in the bottom drawer. Under the sink, you'll find backup roll of paper towels, gloves that you can utilize as oven mitts in the kitchen. That's fine. They're welding gloves, but they work really well to handle hot items. You can use the white towels that are located on the towel rack over here, but you can definitely utilize these as your oven mitts as well. In the bucket here, sanitizing bucket, you'll fill with 1 cap of either bleach or sanitizing solution from the middle cart. You'll fill 1 cap full into 3/4 of the way full bucket, utilizing the green towels that are on the towel cart. And that's your sanitizing solution that you utilize on a daily basis. You've got a drain, some scrubbing pads, and dish soap to fill your sinks up and do your dishes. The dishes should be cleaned, air dried, and put away. If they're a little bit wet at the end of the class period, that's fine, but they need to be put away before the close of the class period. This is where you'll grab one of these storage containers.
So you'll see there's labels on the storage containers. Okay, I'll talk about that in a moment, but every lab, every period has a bin.
To store your dry goods or cold food if it needs to go in the refrigerator for your prep. If you're doing a competency the following day, but you put your prep in this, label it, and on the inside, so we can see what class and what period and what station you are. You've got some cutting boards up here, some storage bags, and some paper plates and bowls up in the top. Last
There's also plastic food storage containers, what we call deli containers. They're up in the cabinet above your stove, okay? Different varying sizes with lids. So when you do your mise en place, we'll talk about mise en place. When you do your mise en place and you're cutting everything or measuring everything, you'll put the food into those smaller containers.
Last area I wanted to draw your attention to was under the oven. You've got some general storage for sheet pans, sill pads, muffin tins, pizza stone, loaf pan, and different baking pans as well. So that's a general overview of your cooking station. And again, you'll be working in teams of 4, and you'll be doing your cooking, your prep and cooking, and competency tasting and assessment on these stations. If you have any questions, thanks for joining me on the tour, and happy cooking.
All right, so moving on from there, we'll break into it. So you'll see here, the bins, okay? The period is the first number, okay? So we'll go from general to specific. And the station, okay, is the second number. So you're going to see, okay, what it should be, all right? Every one of the bins, okay, is going to start with a different number. And then the second number is 1 here. The second number is 2 here, 3, 4, 5, and 6. So we just want to make sure the bins stay on the right stations. So then when you go to get your bin, you know it's your bin. So you should always check your bin and make sure it's the correct bin. There's a couple bins missing. I'll track those down today and get them onto your stations. Okay, so that term, mise en place, I'm going to talk about this just for a moment, and I want to wrap up and give you time. So here's a quick overview of what mise en place is.
Success in the kitchen always begins with preparation. When we cook, the first thing we do is write a prep list that organizes the jobs that need to get done. Even with years of practice, we've learned that it's best to take a few minutes to write this down rather than try to keep it in our head. Once we have a prep list in hand, we go shopping. But the real work begins once all of the ingredients are in your kitchen. If you've never worked as a chef, you might be surprised to learn that most of the labor goes into prep, rather than cooking for service. This is the daily routine of mise en place, a catch-all phrase that describes everything.
I would say it's a term, it's called like television ready, right? That means if you ever, who's watched just any cooking demonstration type show on the Food Network or whatever, right? Whenever the chef is cooking, they have all their ingredients sitting there, and they're moving through the cooking process. Everything sliced, diced, minced, chopped. Okay, so the idea is that everything is prepared, okay, and then you're ready to either cook or bake and to go into that process.
That happens to food, from the moment it arrives at the kitchen to the point where a dish is ready to be quickly cooked and served to a customer. Mastering the art of mise en place will do more to improve your cooking than anything else we can teach you in this course. This is why the next few lectures and demonstrations will look at ways to organize prep, work efficiently, keep things clean and tidy, and get everything in place to be successful in the kitchen.
So everybody say mise en place. Mise en place. All right. So say mise en place. All right. So that's the French term for having everything in its place. All right. Pre-measuring everything, pre-slicing, pre-dicing, pre-mincing, pre-chopping, so that you're ready to go into the cooking process. Mise en place. Your recipes is the last thing I want to cover, and then I'm going to talk measuring, and we're done for the day in terms of lecture, okay? There's a mental aspect to mise en place that's important, okay? The idea is that you don't only come in and physically prepare to do the recipe, you want to mentally prepare and do the recipe. So that means reading the recipe in advance. I am absolutely convinced you'll be so much more successful. You increase your probability dramatically of being successful with the item that you're preparing just by reading the recipe in advance, okay? Does that mean read the first few steps? No, it means read the entire recipe. You have to understand the entire goal, all right? I always talk about reading a recipe, all right, jumping ahead here. It's like a GPS. You're on a trip, okay? A recipe has an anatomy. There's a title. There's a yield for how much you're going to get out of the recipe, whether it's a half a gallon of soup or whether it's 4 portions of chicken, whatever it might be, there's a yield. There's an ingredient list, okay? General to specific. So a noun being onion and a verb being diced. Okay, so you're going to look at the recipe here. It says russet potatoes, skin on, washed, medium diced. Okay, so the descriptor goes from an object and what you're going to do to that item. That's a properly written recipe. Okay, bell pepper, red, medium diced. So you'll often put the verb, what you want to be done with that ingredient, you'll put it in the ingredient list, so then you don't include that in the directions. You know that's part of mise en place. At a baseline, red pepper, red, medium, bell pepper, red, medium diced, I know that I'm going to do that, and then I'm gonna be ready to cook. Okay, you're gonna have directions on the recipe, major steps outlined, but few words is the goal. Okay, GPS is the journey. It's going to tell you not only where you begin and where you end, but how you get there. That's the function of a recipe. Okay, you're going to notice that in my recipes in particular, there are underlined sections. That just denotes the fact that those ingredients have a relationship in some capacity in the directions. So it might be that the sugar and the butter are underlined, they're sectioned off together because the step down below tells you to cream the sugar and butter. So you know that something's going to be happening with those two ingredients together. It might have flour, okay, baking soda, baking powder, salt, okay, put together because you're going to sift those ingredients together. Okay, so the notes annotate sort of a step in the recipe. It's another way for me to communicate that there's a relationship between those ingredients. Okay. I'm going to skip the humor. You've got your measuring handout that I gave you yesterday. You're going to be using that. You have a measuring quiz this week, next week, and the following week. You're going to find the measuring quiz are the same questions asked in different sequencing. There's some basic math and arithmetic, addition, subtraction, multiplication, division that are required for some of those questions. So you want to have the handout in front of you when you do the quiz. I don't even care if you collab on it and do it together. The thing is, every student who takes it, the questions are going to come at you in a different sequence. So conceptually, you need to understand the math in order to be successful. The idea of the handout is to simply pick the measuring the way that it makes sense to you. So if you weren't here yesterday, I have measuring handouts for you. Let me know. Come on up and get one when we get going here. Okay? All right? So the idea is that you're going to pick the handout in this package. You're going to pick the item that best communicates. Okay? That best communicates to you how to remember the information. Okay? All right. Handout, a combination of learning styles. Measuring is important so we can have success with the recipe that we're preparing. Obviously, in baking in particular, it's extremely important. Types of measuring, okay, they're outlined in the handout. And we talk about 3 primary types of measuring. This is on the quiz. Count, meaning 1 carrot. The number 1 is a count, right? It's 1 each, okay? Count is a weigh. 1 pear, 1 onion. Okay, that's 1 medium onion. Whatever it is, that's a count. Volume, if you look at the containers over here, the clear containers are volume. Now, the stainless steel containers, they're volume as well. Okay, it's preferred to measure volume in a plastic container where you can see the side. When you have the container and you're measuring a liquid in it, you've got gallon, half gallon, pint, quart, pint, and cup over here. When you're measuring with the device, it's important to pour the liquid into it, put it on a level surface, okay, and then look at it to see if it's eye level. So kneel down or squat down and look to make sure you're at the appropriate measurement, okay? So you've got count, you've got volume, typically with the plastic, okay, or the other stainless steel containers, okay? Both are considered volume. And then weight, count, volume, and weight. Weight is using a what?
A scale.
A scale, nice, okay? So weight is using a scale. So you have scales on each one of your stations, just small scales that look like this, okay? So you have weight, volume, and count, okay? And then the key is with the scaling, right? You turn the scale on, you put a container on it, you tare it, T-A-R-E, tare. It means you zero the scale. So then you take the weight of the container off, and then you weigh the food or liquid that you're putting into the vessel, okay? So again, I'll demonstrate that to you when we get into our first lab tomorrow of how to do appropriate scaling We'll get into that a little bit more in detail during the lab. Weight, volume, and count. You want to use the appropriate measuring tools. You want to level, okay? So you're always going to have a flat edge. You've got a flat edge that's in your measuring spoon kit, okay, right here that you can use, okay? Use the flat edge just to scrape off the top and level it, or just use a baking scraper, a bench scraper like this, okay? If you needed a half teaspoon of something right here, I'd scoop it out and then I just level it off, okay? Process of ingredient selecting using tray. This is important to understand the importance of efficiency when you're measuring. So go get your ingredients, measure all of them at once. Don't go back and forth to the back room 5 times. Usually I'm going to have the ingredients out here and you'll measure from that station, a centralized area, okay? But you'll gather everything, measure everything, and then you'll move forward with the baking and cooking process. There are measuring posters on the north wall over here. You can always reference those even while you're in the measuring quiz. You're welcome to look at those as a resource to help you be successful. Measuring, all right, understanding there's 3 teaspoons in a tablespoon, 2 tablespoons in an ounce, 8 ounces in a cup, 2 cups in a pint, 4 cups in a quart, 2 pints in a quart, okay, and 4 quarts in a gallon, okay? Understanding that scale, what I just said, is your key to being successful with measuring. Okay, your handouts convey that information. Study the handouts. Use them when you take the quiz. You need to know this. This is at the bottom of Bloom's taxonomy. This is rogue memorization. 2 + 2 = 4. 8 ounces are in a cup. You need to just memorize that. 16 ounces in a
2 cups.
Yeah, in a pint or 2 cups. But then if it's by weight, 16 ounces are in a pound. Okay. So it's either a pint by volume, okay, or a pound by weight, okay? All right, I'm going to show you this video here on measuring, and I'm going to give you time to get into your Chromebooks. Here we go.
Welcome back to this U.S. Open office plan.
Miller just lobbed a message way over Jones's head using some tech.
Hey everybody, Thomas Joseph here with another kitchen conundrum for you. Now today we're going back to the basics with measuring. You need to learn how to measure correctly to have success when you are making recipes. So today I'm going to show you how to do that. Starting off, 2 different types of measuring cups. We have a wet measuring cup and we have a dry measuring cup here. Now, when you're using a dry measuring cup, this is for things like flour and sugar and brown sugar. You can also measure things like mayonnaise and sour cream in a dry measure, anything that you can actually level off, that is what you're going to use this for. Now, for something that you would use a wet measure for would be anything that will level itself off so that you can see it with those lines. So liquids, they would go into this measuring cup here. I'm going to start with dry measuring. Now, flour, main ingredient in baking here. What you need to know is that you shouldn't dip your cup right into the canister itself, because what that does is it packs flour into the cup. So take a scoop or a spoon and gently mix the flour, lightening it, incorporating a little bit of air, because as this canister of flour sits on your shelf, it actually compacts itself. It settles on itself. So give it a little bit of a fluff here and scoop it into your cup.
All right, that's an important step. Scoop it in and overfill, then level it, okay? Don't scoop and get a lot of pressure on the flour. You want to scoop it in and drop it in, all right? So you're factoring that air. You're just getting a nice level off of it.
Sprinkling it in, using that offset spatula, anything with a straight side. You want to give the cup a little bit of a tap, settling in any air pockets that might be in this cup of flour, and a good swipe, leveling it off. And that is a perfect half cup of flour. Now, if a recipe calls for sifted flour, what that means is that you need to sift the flour first and then measure.
That's different. If it says 2 cups flour, and then in the directions it tells you to sift it, that means you do not sift it in advance. But if in the description it calls for sifted flour, that means you need to measure it after the sifting process, okay?
From this bowl, measure this mixture here. And what that means is you're getting a lighter cup of flour, something that isn't so heavy. Now, something like sugar is already dense, so there's no need to stir it up and you don't need to scoop into the cup. You can simply dip your cup into the canister itself and give it a good swipe, and the weights would be completely consistent here. This is a perfect half cup of sugar. Now, brown sugar. We get a lot of questions here in the test kitchens. How do I keep my sugar from getting too hard? Keep it in a well-sealed container. One of these airtight containers is really great. Take a piece of bread, some people like to use a piece of apple, and store it in with your brown sugar, and it will help to keep the sugar nice and soft. Take your measuring cup, dip it into the brown sugar, and pack the sugar into the cup. Most recipes call for packed brown sugar. Now, you know you've done this right if you tap it out into a bowl and the sugar holds its shape. If it crumbles, that means that you haven't packed it firmly enough and that you should start over. So now for liquid measurements. Use a spouted glass measuring cup here. And when you're measuring things like honey or molasses, anything that's sticky and viscous, sometimes corn syrup, give your glass a spray with some nonstick cooking spray. And what that does is it will easily slide out on you. So I'm using honey today, a half cup measure. You want to check your measurement, and you actually should bend down and check that it registers a half a cup so that it's nice and level and a half cup. So this is good to go, and that's how you measure a liquid ingredient. So now to measure by weight, what you need is a digital scale for this, and certain recipes will call for ingredients by weight. Chocolate, for example, or fruit whenever you're baking. So take the bowl that you're going to measure into, place it on the scale, and you need to zero out or tear out the weight of the bowl itself so that you don't count that in the measurement. So all you have to do is press the button again.
All right, that's called tearing or zeroing the scale. So you put the vessel on it, then you zero it or tear it, so then it's zeroed again, then you measure the ingredients.
It should register 0, and now you're ready to measure the weight of whatever ingredient you have. So there you have it, a few simple tricks and tips in measuring ingredients the right way, and that will set you up for success in the kitchen. If you have any kitchen conundrums, write in the comment section below or reach out to us using the hashtag Kitchen Conundrums, and we will solve whatever problems you may have.
Okay, so that's a good overview of measuring, okay? And again, the video link to this video, if you need to watch it again, is in Google Classroom. And then there's some measuring resources also located in Google Classroom if you want to check those out. What I'd like you to do now is to get your Chromebooks out. If you don't have a Chromebook, grab one from me at the front. If you need to borrow a charger, give me collateral and I'll loan you a charger. And what I would like you to do is to first check your grade. And then second, if you're surprised about your grade, I need you to figure out by looking at View Your Work what you need to concentrate on. I'm going to give you the remainder of the class period to get some of those assignments submitted, to finish your Ruby Food Safety, to submit your management leadership schedule that we did yesterday, to submit any quizzes that were outstanding from last week or the previous week. All of that needs to be completed. So I'm going to go around. Go to View Your Work. Listen. Go to View Your Work, have your grade breakdown open with the percent of your grade open, and leave that window open on your computer. So when I come by and I say I want to see your grade, you can show it to me. Okay? So leave your window open with your grade and then work in another window. Does that make sense? Okay? Leave the View Your Work button open so the percent is at the top, then go to another tab. And when I come by, just click on the tab and show it to me. All right? With that, I'd like you guys to work independently. Let's see what we can do to increase the quality of first learning, and secondly, get our grades up accordingly. Have a great class period. Thank you.